Okay, I'm gonna start with the front inspection of the truck here. I'm gonna start with the suspension, make sure it's level. If the suspension was bad, it would be leaning to the left or to the right. That would indicate a bad suspension or a flat tire. How you doing, buddy? Like you see, it's in good condition. I'm gonna start off with the underneath the engine and transmission carriage. Make sure there's no water leak, no oil leak. Same thing with that transmission, there's no oil leak. Like you see, it's in good condition. Or check any wires or hoses hanging from the engine down. Then I'm going to start with the front headlights. Make sure they're nice and clean, and then you can walk up to them. Make sure they're nice and clean, they're not cracked or broken, the light bulb's not burned or missing. It's in good condition. Make sure that's no missing screws all the way around. It's perfectly in good condition, the left and the right. The high and low beams are working fine. I'm gonna check the signal lights, the left and the right, make sure they're clean and clear, they're not cracked or broken. This one has a little bit of physical damage, but it's fine to drive. Make sure that the light bulb's not burned or cracked. No missing screws, it's working good. Then I'm gonna check my 5 ID lights up here. They're amber in color as well. They're not cracked or broken. The light bulb's not burnt. No missing screws, nice and tight. And I'm gonna check the exhaust system, make sure it's not higher than my trailer. Do the engine. Go ahead and pause it right there. So we'll start with the windshield wash wiper fluid right here. Make sure it's always above level. The cap is tight. Make sure it's not cracked or broken or missing, and no missing screws. It's in good condition. My reservoir there. I'm gonna check the oil level right here. Make sure it's always above level. This is the dipstick where I check the oil. Make sure the cap is tight. And if it's low, I add it here by the gallon. And make sure the cap is tight, they're not cracked or broken or leaking any oil. No missing screws, working good. Up here I got the water for the radiator, the antifreeze radiator. This screen right here, this is where I check the level. Like you see, it's at level. It's above level. The cap is tight. Make sure it's nice and tight with all the brackets. No missing nuts and bolts all the way around. It's in good working condition. Same thing with the clamps and the hoses that are running all the way down. Make sure there's no water leak. They're not cut or ripped. They're nice and tight with all the clamps. Working good. I check the radiator from the front and the back all the way around. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured to the chassis or the frame. No missing nuts and bolts. No crack, no leaking oil. Water. No crack, no broken, no leaking water. It's in good condition, my radiator. Then I'm gonna check my fan right here. Make sure the fan's not, the blades are not cracked or broken. There's no missing nuts and bolts. Always clean, no garbage in between. Now I'm going to check all the V-belts. Make sure all the V-belts, they're not cut or are fried by the sun. The play on it, make sure it's no more than a 3/4 inch of play. This one has about a 1/2 inch play, which is still good. The fan belt might be about a 1/4 inch play. They're all in good condition. Right here I got the alternator. Make sure that the alternator is not loose, it's not hanging, it's properly mounted and secured to the motor. Make sure there's no nuts and bolts missing. Make sure it's not burnt. All the electrical cables or wires all the way to the top, they're not burned or fried. They're nice and tight with all the zip ties. Nice and secure, working good. My water pump right here, it's belt driven. It's not cracked or broken, no leaking water. It's properly mounted and secured to the engine block. Make sure there's no missing screws, nuts and bolts. I'm sorry, there's no nuts and bolts missing. It's working good, good condition. Back here I got the turbo. Right here, this is my turbo. Make sure the turbo is properly mounted and secure with all the clamps. No missing nuts and bolts. Not cracked or broken, good condition. Behind the turbo I got the exhaust system. Make sure the exhaust system is, make sure it's not leaking any black soot. Make sure it's properly mounted and secure with all the clamps. No missing nuts and bolts. It's not hanging or loose. It's working good, good condition. And I'm going to check my exhaust system pipe underneath the cab. It runs all the way up the cab. Make sure there's no signs of black soot. Make sure all the clamps, they're nice and tight and secure. No missing nuts and bolts. I have some U clamps or U bolts right here. Make sure they're not stripped or loose or broken. My exhaust system is properly secure to the cab, properly mounted all the way to the top, no black soot. It's in good condition, my exhaust system. Then you come back over here. Then we're going to talk about our chassis. Make sure that the chassis from the front to the back, it's not cracked or broken, or any illegal welding on the chassis. All these holes are all manufacturer holes, no extra holes or illegal holes. My chassis is in good condition. Right here I got the leaf spring hanger. It's properly mounted and secure to the chassis, no missing nuts and bolts. It's not hanging or loose or broken. Right here on the joints, it's always greased. Then I have my leaf springs here, no missing leaf springs, no space in between the leaf springs. They're not cracked or broken or missing. No illegal welding, then well secure to the 2 U-bolts. My 2 U-bolts and the spacer are properly mounted and secure to the axle, no missing, no crack. It's in good condition. I have my push rod here. Tie rod, sorry. My tie rod, I'm gonna check from side to side. Make sure it's always straight. It's not bent or cracked or illegal welding. It's properly mounted and secure with the castle nut and the cotter pin. It's in good condition, my tie rod. Same thing with the axle. My axle, I'm gonna check from side to side, make sure it's straight, always straight. It's not bent or cracked or illegal welding. It's properly secure and it's in good condition. Right here I have my shock. My shock, it is straight, it's not bent or cracked. Right here on the joints, no leaking oil. Properly mounted and secure with all the nuts and bolts and the brackets. Back here I got the shackle. My shackles are properly mounted and secured to the chassis. No missing nuts and bolts. No hanging or loose or crack. Always grease. Good condition. Now I'm going to check my brake system. Right here I got my brake air hose. Make sure it's not cut, no leaking air. My fittings, they're not cracked or broken or missing, no leaking air. They're properly mounted and secure. Right here I got the brake chamber clamp. The brake clamp, it's properly secure with the around the chamber. There's no missing nuts and bolts, no leaking air. My brake chamber as well is properly mounted and secure with all the nuts and bolts, no missing nuts and bolts, no leaking air. It's in good condition. This right here is my push rod. My push rod, no more than 1 inch plate. My push rod is straight, it's not bent or cracked or stripped. It's well secure with all the pins and the cotter pins. My brake slack adjuster, it's always at a 90-degree angle when I apply the brakes. It's not cracked or broken or missing or hanging or loose. It's well secure. My brake adjuster nut right here is not stripped or cracked or broken. It's in good condition. Inside my rim I have my brake lining and my brake drum. My brake lining, no less than 1/4 inch wear. If it had less than 1/4 inch wear, I would have to replace both sides. It's not cracked or broken or no leaking. There's no oil leak or grease in between. It's nice and clean. My brake drum is metal, so my brake drum all the way around. Make sure it has no illegal welds. It's not cracked or broken. It's properly mounted and secure. It's in good condition. My rim all the way from the inside and all the way around, making sure there's no illegal welds. It's not cracked or broken. It's properly mounted to the tire, secure. It's in good condition, my rim. My tire sidewalls, the outside and the inside all the way around. Make sure it's properly mounted to the rim. It has no patches, no cuts, no bubbles. My tire is in good condition. The PSI is no less than 100 PSI, and that indicates somewhere around here. My PSI, I check it daily with the tire air gauge. The top of the tire here, the life is 432s, no less than 432s. I check it with the tire gauge, and I check that daily too. It has no nails, no rocks. My tire is in good condition here, my steering tire. I have 10 lug nuts. All my 10 lug nuts are properly secured or properly mounted. No missing nuts, no rust, no pencil marks. If it had any rust, that means it's cracked. If it had any pencil marks, that would indicate it's loose. All my 10 lug nuts, they're in good condition. I got the valve here. Make sure that the valve's not touching the rim. It's not leaking any air. It's right, nice and straight. No missing cap. I'm missing the cap here, but it's safe to drive. Right here, I got the hub seal. My hub seal, it's properly mounted and secured to the rim, to the hub. No missing nuts and bolts. My hub seal is not leaking, has no fresh leaks. I check this hub seal. I check the level, I check it daily, make sure it's always level. I can check it two ways. Sometimes the glass is clear, or I pop this cap and check it with the stick or my finger if I like to. My hub seal is in good condition. Let's go back to the other side. Over here on this side, I got the power steering reservoir. It's properly mounted and secure with the clamp here. No missing nuts and bolts. It's in good condition, no leaks. The level is always above level. The cap is nice and tight. All my hoses and clamps is nice and secure. There's no leaks on my hoses and clamps. Same thing with the fittings. They're not cracked or broken, secured properly. This right here is my AC compressor. My AC compressor is properly mounted. It's not cracked, loose, or hanging. It's properly mounted with all the nuts and bolts to the block. My belt here, my belt has no more than a 3/4 inch of play. It has about 3/4 inch play, so no more play than that. My belt, my belt, it's not cut or missing. It's well secure. My power steering pump down there, it's properly mounted and secure to the block. No missing nuts and bolts. It's no hanging or loose or no play. My power steering pump, it's belt driven. It's in good condition, my power steering pump. Down there, I have my air compressor. It's properly mounted and secured to the block. No missing nuts and bolts. It's not cracked or broken or loose. No leaking air. It's in good condition. This right here is my air governor. My air governor is nice and tight with all the nuts and bolts. No missing, no loose. No crack, no broken. All the hoses and electrical, they're properly mounted and secured. They're not leaking any air, or the wires are not burned. They're in good condition. My air governor. This right here is my steering bar. My steering has good play. It's not cracked or broken or loose. It's nice and straight. It's in good condition. My U-joints are nice and greased. My U-joints, make sure there's no missing nuts and bolts. They're in good condition, my U-joints. This right here is my power steering box. My power steering box is properly mounted and secure to the chassis. No missing nuts and bolts. All the nuts and bolts are nice and tight and secure. No fresh leaks underneath it. My power steering box is in good condition. This right here is my Pitman bar. My Pitman bar has no play. It's well secured to the power steering box. No missing castle nut or cotter pin. Back here I got the rubber bushing. My rubber bushing is not cut. It's nice and greased. Good condition. This right here is my drag link bar. My drag link bar is nice and straight. It's not cracked or broken. It has no play. Nice and tight with the castle nut and the cotter pin on each end. No missing nut or bolts. And my bushings are nice and greased. They're not cut or ripped. My my drag link is in good condition. Now the next step, I inspect this daily, and I inspect it the same way I inspect the other side. I'm going to name the parts. I have my leaf spring hanger here. I got the set of leaf springs, my 2 U-bolts, my spacer. I have my axle, my tie rod back there, my shock, my shackles in the back. All that, I check it daily, and I check it the same way I did the other side. Now my brake system here, I got the air brake hose here, the brake clamp, the brake chamber, the push rod, the brake slack adjuster, the brake lining, and the brake drum. I check that daily, and I check it the same way I check the other side. Now I'm going to check my tires, the rims, the 10 lug nuts, the valve stem or the valve, the hub seal. I check that daily, and I check it the same way I did the other side, and everything is in good condition. Now go back on the other side. On this side I have my signal light. It's amber in color. It's nice and tight to the cab. No light bulbs burned. No missing screws. It's in good condition. I got my mirrors right here. They're properly mounted and secure. They're not hanging or loose. No play. They're properly adjusted. They're in good condition. My bars, no missing nuts and bolts or screws, nice and tight to the door. My door, there's no physical damage on the outside. It opens and closes fine from the outside. Same thing with the inside. The inside door opens, the window rolls up and down easy, all the way to the top and down. I have 2 door hinges here. They're properly mounted and secured to the cab. No missing nuts and bolts. Nice and greased. Closes and opens fine. I have the seal here all the way, or the weather stripping, whatever you like to mention. Make sure it's not missing. It's in good condition. I got the handle to climb up the truck safely. I got make sure it's not cracked or bent or any grease or oil. It's nice and clean. No missing nuts and bolts. Properly secured to the cab. I have my diesel tank here. I have 2 straps. They're properly mounted and secured to the chassis. No missing nuts and bolts in there. I have some fuel lines here. Make sure they're not leaking any fuel. They're not cut. They're not ripped. Same thing with the fittings. They're not stripped or cracked or leaking or broken. All the electrical here, it's grounding. Make sure the grounding is not cut or peeled or burnt. The nut's not missing. It's in good condition. Right here I got the fuel cap here. Make sure it's nice and tight. It's not missing. It's not leaking any fuel. It's in good condition. I have 2 steps. They're properly mounted and secured to the straps. No missing hardware or no missing nuts and bolts. It's always clean. No oil, no grease. They're in good condition, my 2 steps. Underneath the fuel tank, make sure there's no fresh fuel leaks. It's in good condition. Back here or down here I got 2 air tanks. I got the primary and secondary air tank, no leaking air. It's nice and tight, mounted properly to the chassis. My valves are not leaking any air. All the air lines and hoses are all in good condition. They're not leaking any air as well. They're properly mounted and secure. I got the catwalk here. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured to the chassis with all the nuts and bolts. There's no missing nuts and bolts. It's always clean. Make sure there's no oil or grease. I got the rest of my chassis from the front all the way to the back. My chassis, it's not cracked or bent. No illegal welding. All these holes you see here, they're all manufactured holes. There's no extra holes or illegal holes. Right here in the middle, you like to go in between there, I have my drive shaft. My drive shaft is nice and straight from the front all the way to the back. I have some U-joints there on the back and on the front. Make sure they're not missing any nuts or bolts. They're nice and greased. They're well secured, properly mounted. Now I'm going to start with the 5th wheel and the apron. There's space in between the 5th wheel and the apron. It's nice and greased in between. Inside my 5th wheel I have the kingpin. The kingpin's not cracked or broken, no illegal welding. It's nice and secure. The leaf springs, I'm sorry, the shoot, I forgot. The locking jaws, there's nice and locked around the shank. My locking jaws are not cracked or broken. They're nice and tight and greased. It's in good condition. I got the 5th wheel handle release handle on the right over there. Make sure it's always on the lock position. It opens and closes nice and smooth. It's in good condition. It's not bent or cracked. I got all the 5th wheel platform here. My 5th wheel platform all the way around. It's not cracked or broken or illegal welding. It's properly mounted with all the mounting nuts and the mounting bolts to the chassis. It's well secure and in good condition. Now the rest, I inspect this daily and I inspect the same way. I'm only going to name the parts. I got the brake hose, the brake clamp, brake chamber, brake push rod, brake slack adjuster right there. Inside the rims I got the brake lining and the brake drum, and I check that daily and I inspect it the same way I did the front. Then I have the suspension. I got the shackle here, the leaf spring hanger here. Got the leaf springs, the 2 U-bolts, the spacer. Over on the back I got the shackles. I check that daily and I check it the same way I did the front. I got a splash guard here. Make sure the splash guard is not rubbing against the tire. It's not dragging. It's not loose. Nice and tight with all the U-bolt clamps. It's properly mounted and secure. I got a little bit of physical damage up here. Same thing with the other side, but it's safe to drive. I got the rims and the tires. Got my 10 lug nuts, my axle sear here. I got the valve stem. I check that daily and I check it the same way I did the front. The only difference here, I'm going to call them out, and this is the life of the tires right here on the back is 432 minimum. I check it with the tire gauge and I check that daily. The other difference is my hub seal. I have a hub seal on the front and actual seal here in the back. There's two different seals. And then the difference on this rims, well, actually there's no difference. They're the same rims as the front, but if I had any difference, it would be a hub seal. I'm sorry, a butt spacer or a spacer, which I don't have here. They're both the same. All three of them are the same. They're all in good condition. Back here I got the brake lights, signal lights, and headlights, parking lights, all in one. They're red color. The light bulb's not burned. They're nice and tight with all the screws. No missing screws. Not cracked or broken, or hanging or loose. In good condition. And that concludes the truck inspection.